The Pro Harmony series of professional style ranges from Thermador are definitely one of the stars of the Thermador product line. There are so many great tools to cook with the Pro Harmony ranges. They're available in all gas or dual fuel. Dual fuel means that you have gas on the top and an electric oven below. Definitely the best place to start is your Thermador user guide. It's extremely comprehensive and very thoughtfully put together with a lot of great tips. The Pro Harmony oven is equipped with 3 full extension racks. These racks can be placed on any rack position that you like. If you're only using 2 racks most of the time, just store the 3rd rack. There are 3 heating elements in your oven. The heating element at the very base of the oven, concealed by the steel plate, the convection element in the rear of the oven, and your broiling element in the top of the oven. The oven mode selector controls those different heating elements. You have a traditional bake element, which is just going to have heat coming up from the bottom of the oven, and in the dual fuel range it will also cycle on a little heat from the top. The convection bake is going to use the bottom heating element to provide heat from the bottom, and the convection fan is going to circulate the heat in the oven, and then of course the broil is the direct heat that's coming from the top heating element. The extended bake feature is a feature that's available for compliance with Sabbath principles if needed. The interesting thing about convection heat in ovens is that it actually came from the baking industry. Because when heated air is circulated around the oven, it gives the bakers the ability to bake on multiple racks at one time, but convection is a strong driving heat. So the very first thing you have to remember is if you choose convection for your baking, reduce your recipe temperatures by 25 degrees. When we bake cookies in our Thermador Pro Harmony range, we find it best to use these totally flat cookie sheets. There's a very easy visual to know if you have the right temperature with convection baking. Because the heat circulates around the food, it cooks it from the edge to the core. So if your edges are brown and the center is not cooked, your temperature was too high. Use light colored pans for your baking because dark colored pans concentrate the heat and will cook things a little faster. When we're baking several racks of cookies or appetizers, we love to use convection. We find it works really well. But there are certain recipes that we still feel traditional bake does an even better job. Think about rack positions. There's a lot of information in the user guide, but you can use the central rack position for traditional baking, or if you're baking breads or pies, you can go down to rack 2 to get additional browning. It's not uncommon when people have a new oven, they want to make sure that it's calibrated correctly. So we talk to a lot of consumers who go and buy an oven thermometer and put it in the oven. Usually where you place the thermometer is not the same place where the sensor that controls the thermostat in the oven is placed. So you won't always get an accurate reading. I'm a big fan of cooking something like cornbread, because the pale yellow, I can see if there's any unevenness, if it's cooking too hot, if it's not cooking well enough. So providing you've used the right rack position, you've made the right temperature adjustment, if you're using convection, everything should work out fine. Even though the modes on your Pro Harmony range say bake and convection bake, these are still the modes you're going to use for your roasting. When we roast in convection, we avoid super high temperatures. So if you cook a chicken, say, at a very high temperature, you risk overcooking the edges before the center is cooked. So for roasting, we find convection bake 350 is a great temperature to start with. You'll see with our chicken that we're roasting here today, it's sitting on a rack in a shallow pan. And instead of having the legs tied tight to the body, they're sitting at goal posts. We have a skewer through the legs just to balance the chicken. The reason we put the chicken on a rack in a shallow pan is so the convection heat can circulate around it. All the juice that's in the chicken stays in the chicken. You'll often see the juice under the skin bubbling away. And what we like to do is towards the end of the cooking is then we put the temperature up a little higher, just to get that extra bit of browning and crisping that makes food so appealing. We use this same method for roasting all our large cuts of meat, especially turkeys. Now, here's the other great thing about convection, being able to cook an entire meal at one time. So we have the chicken going, and towards the end of the cooking time we're adding our vegetables. And the vegetables we're roasting, the cauliflower and the carrots, are going to take about 20 to 25 minutes to cook. It doesn't matter if the vegetables are exposed to some high heat, so we're going to add them in at that last little stage of the cooking of the chicken, and then we'll drop the temperature down to 350 to finish them while the chicken is out of the oven resting and being carved. Now, when we're roasting smaller types of food, where it could be sausages or chicken pieces, those foods cook relatively quickly, and we actually find they work well on a rimmed baking sheet. So if you're just cooking a small amount of food, you can often just put one baking sheet in the oven and cook everything on one sheet. Or if you have larger quantities, you can use those two sheets. When you're roasting foods on multiple racks in your oven, do be aware that in convection bake you are always going to have heat from the bottom of the oven as well. So I always like to cook my roast potatoes or anything that I want really crispy either on rack position 1 or 2, because I know those foods are going to get a lot more intensity of heat. So don't forget to turn them halfway through cooking to make sure they don't get over brown on one side. When you broil in your Pro Harmony range, you'll choose the broil setting and you'll only preheat the oven for 5 minutes. Make sure your ventilation's on. Always broil steak or any marbled cuts of meat on the oven broil pan. When you broil steaks or chops, you'll find that between 6 to 8 minutes on the first side is plenty, and maybe 4 minutes on the second side is enough too. Now, the appropriate rack position for broiling is going to be rack position 5. You don't want to go on the very top, go one down from the top. The only time we use the very top rack position is if we're broiling shrimp or asparagus, something that's very small and light and cooks very quickly. Because this mode is very powerful, you will hear the internal oven ventilation turn on. That's perfectly normal. With the Thermador all-gas range, you have a gas broiler. It's a ceramic brick with a sheet of fire that comes out. The dual fuel range has an electric broiler, so you have the exposed coils in the top of the oven. You can use the broiler in the regular broil mode or in the convection broil mode. When you combine convection with broiling, you really get great results because you get the direct heat from the broiler, the convection fan circulating the heat, and when you use convection, you'll have moisture retention. The burners on the Pro Harmony ranges are all 18,000 BTUs. They are the Thermador star burners, and those are unique because of the additional flame spread that they provide to each burner. The burners are elevated, which is a wonderful feature for easy cleaning. When you're boiling water, get to the highest heat you can that's appropriate for the size of pan you're using. Put the lid on and the water will come to a boil in no time. So that's a time you would use really high heat. When you're heating up a pan to do some searing, the best advice I can give you is heat the pan over medium heat. Whether it's a cast iron pan or whether it's a stainless steel pan, we find that it's better to let the pan heat up nice and evenly throughout. So get in tune with the heat, see how the pan relates to the heat, and you'll do so much better. When we're doing something like these delicately breaded chicken breasts, this is a perfect example of how you want to get the pan nicely hot without smoking hot. When we make rice on our Thermador cooktop, we bring the water to a boil. That doesn't take long at all. We add the rice, and now we drop it down to simmer. After the rice has been cooking for about 10 minutes, I usually notice that some bubbles try to peek out from underneath the lid. And now I go to one of my favorite features of the gas cooktop, and that is the extra low feature. When we go down to extra low, the flame is intermittent. At the lowest setting, it's only on for 7 seconds and off for 53. So all it's doing is keeping that cast iron hot. The Thermador Pro Harmony ranges are available with a griddle. There's also a griddle accessory if you have a 6-burner range. I'm going to show you how we can make really good eggs in this pan, and the pan doesn't even have to be a non-stick pan. The key will be in how you heat the pan. Bacon can be cooked on a griddle, of course, or in a pan. All you have to do is pour the grease off at the end and store it. Your cooktop gives you great tools, but pay attention to how you heat your pans. Always have your ventilation on low, and add your oil and your butter when you've already heated the pan so that you don't end up with a lot of smoke in the kitchen. If you have a dual fuel range, Pro Harmony range, then your oven is actually going to be self-cleaning. The gas oven is going to take good old-fashioned elbow grease. The one place on every oven that I cook on that gets really dirty is the inside of the door. I take a small SOS pad, just gently go over the glass. These SOS pads I've found do not scratch the glass. You have to take care not to get the gasket wet in the oven when you're doing any manual cleaning. You can clean the racks in the sink, get a little bit of the caramelization off the side of the racks, but they actually will fit in your Thermador dishwasher if you take out the top rack. So you have a spillover in the oven. While the oven's warm, put a little bit of water on it and let it sit. We find products like Barkeeper's Friend or Bon Ami. These are products that scour without scratching. They do a good job of helping lift those products out. I found that with all the ovens I clean every year, that these terry bar towels are really the best for cleaning, or a microfiber cloth. Now on the cooktop, I always begin with warm soapy water to just wipe off the grease. Again, these terry bar towels I find are the best. The griddle on your Thermador range can actually be washed in place, or if it becomes really in need of deeper cleaning, that can also go in the dishwasher. Where are all these tips if you want to review them? Your user guide. Cleaning the range and keeping it clean is not difficult. This is a great range. Cook in harmony with your range and you'll find it's just a joy.